The Catches You podcast. Today's guest is Brandon Oliver, founder and owner of Catcher Coalition, which is a catching academy based out of Southern California. Thanks for coming on the show today, Brandon. How you doing, brother?
Hey, what's going on, man? I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Not bad, man. It's snowy and icy out here on the East Coast, so please don't tell me that it's 80 degrees and perfect weather out there on the West Coast, because I might get a little jealous.
Nah, man, it's cold out here. It's like 68.
Well, we'll make sure we get you a winter jacket out there.
Yeah.
Nah, man. Wanted to have you on today. You're a guy that you and I connected over COVID last year. Started talking a lot about just different ways to kind of teach the same stuff and different ways to think about things. And one thing that you and I talked to each other about really early on was the chain of the shoulder to the hand, and getting kids away from thinking hands first. And I think that was something for me. Even it was kind of a light bulb. It was like I've been teaching that from the front side, and I hadn't really thought about teaching it from the back side. So I remember our first phone call. I called you. We were talking about the J band drills that you were doing. And I've always, since then, you and I, we've used each other's sounding boards, and we've called each other. And it's something that I've really been fascinated with when it comes to my coaching and my teaching. So kind of just wanted to kick this off with what you mean by the chain, and kind of some of your little stuff like that, and we'll just keep diving in deep into everything.
Yeah, for sure. It's everything's a progression, and that's one of the things that I never figured out as a player, but as a coach, it's pretty apparent that there's always going to be another step, whether it's a big step or a small step. But we kind of figured out early on that in order to be strong through the catch, strong through your movements, controlling your glove path, and all the things that we were looking at the time, like, we really understood that the shoulder and the elbow were really important. And where guys were really going wrong was with early moves, through the glove or the hand, and they were losing leverage on the pitch, or they were losing their ability to work from underneath now. So as soon as you lose that, the thought of catching it or manipulating it, or even just being strong and controlling the ball have probably gone out the window. So, and as this has progressed, as we've kind of evolved the way we look at receiving, and what moves are what we think to be the most optimal, we really have an understanding of like this free flowing movement that we want to create, or we want our catchers to feel. It's very important that they understand the role that the shoulder and the elbow kind of play in that. And it starts all the way with the pre-pitch move, right? So, start there, understand what happens just with the arm and with space. What space do you want to work in? That's another thing that can definitely affect you getting out of sync, if you will, or breaking the kinetic chain kind of thing. And so that's definitely one of the biggest things that we'll talk to our guys about, or we'll try to explain when going through, trying to create these movement patterns and trying to create these feels for them, is that kinetic chain, and just how we keep everything in leverage positions and free flowing movements.
No, I think that's huge, and kind of going into that next step, pre-pitch movement. And for people that are not familiar with that term, what pre-pitch movement has become is a quarter turn on steroids, in the sense of it's a movement that allows a catcher to get on time, and allows us to get outside of the ball. And one thing what I've seen is, from kids thinking about their shoulder, to use their shoulder to get outside a ball, or outside the ball, and naturally allow themselves to work back to the zone. They actually understand what being outside the ball means. Whereas most kids who are thinking elbow to hand, and they get caught in the middle, what I've seen is, to get to this ball, they do a check mark, right? They get inside the ball and then try to pull, which is a very kind of rigid, and it's not, like you said, free flowing. Whereas if I'm using my shoulder, I can get outside that ball and then bring it, because my natural path to the reception, right, is already outside, and I'm naturally moving back to the zone. Whereas if I'm inside the ball, I'm pushing from the inside and then trying to redirect. I'm trying to catch and grab versus,
Yeah.
and I think to what I've seen is kids starting to understand, one thing a lot of guys would say, and this is a term that's been around for a while, the bus wheel, right? The bus wheel.
Yeah.
Get on the bus wheel. Most kids had no idea what that was, because they were like, oh, how do I get to this ball if it's here and I'm on the bus? How do I don't understand, right? Like, they didn't understand, like, to get to this ball here, they had to get out here, right, early, so that they could work back. And it's not even moving the ball, right? It's just, even if I'm going to receive this ball the right way, I still got to get my pocket to the outside of that ball, even if I don't move it, even if I just get to here, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, no, so like, kind of go into a little bit more depth, like what you talk about with your pre-pitch, and then kind of, and I love the movement pattern, like, just like for kids to understand what that, like, that's what it is, like, there's a movement pattern to the ball, and every pitch, every time, it's different, and understanding that there's different movement patterns to different pitches, I think really kind of unlocks kids' brains back there.
Oh, for sure. It's the thing that I love about it the most, because that's how we talk about it all the time, is creating movement patterns. And the thing that's great is when we do that, we create an environment sometimes where that can be the focus, and instead of just catching the ball. And I know that that's kind of hard for some people to understand, but the biggest thing I see in youth players is they prioritize stopping the ball over making the right move.
Right.
And in a game, like, that's all you'd want, right? Like, you want
Right.
your catcher to control the ball. I get it. I'm like so on board with that. But if that's always going to be your priority 24/7, even in your training environment, how are you ever going to change your movement patterns?
Right.
Right. So we actually do a ton of work with our guys, at least at the beginning, where when we're making these changes to how they're attacking the baseball, or how they're loading to attack the baseball, usually securing the baseball or pocketing the baseball is the least of my concerns.
Right.
It's getting them to commit to something different than what they're already programmed to do. And I think that's the hardest thing. And the one thing getting in the way of that change is catching the ball, right? It's very similar to taking a kid who is super quick to bail on his swing and get on his front side just to make contact, because he's scared of striking out, right?
Right.
That's fine. I don't want guys striking out either, but we want to go in the box to do damage, and we want guys to swing with authority and with intent. And sometimes the way that you get kids there is by telling them that it's okay if you swing and miss. You got 2 more swings.
Right. Don't be scared.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
right. You have 3 for a reason. Right. Exactly.
So, that's what we really like about just the verbiage, movement pattern, and kind of how we talk about it. Now, in terms of the pre-pitch move, I think
Hey, real quick, Brandon, real quick. Just for people that are for watching and listening, the other thing, the other analogies that I like to use too, from a defensive standpoint, it's like an outfielder that never gets behind the baseball, always stops early and just catches the ball that comes down their head, right? They can catch the ball, right? But they never work behind it, so they can never work through the ball and make a good throw. Or an infielder that never is in a good position, is always behind the ball, or doesn't have it. It doesn't take that extra step to work their feet back through the ball, right? So it's kind of like the analogy is like, yes, you can catch it, yes, but if you can take that extra step, and I really like using the outfield one because I feel like that's the one that almost everyone really understands, as far as like, we don't want that ball coming right down on our head. We want to get 2 more steps behind it so that we're naturally working through the ball early, right?
Yeah.
And I just think like that that should help like people kind of understand like the hitting is 100%, right? Like sometimes you got to swing through a fastball, right? So you can do damage later, like, right? Like that makes sense. And it's just like getting people in a training environment. And that's the difference, right? Like, yes, when you're training, you're doing that, right? Like we do drills all the time with outfielders or infielders where they over exaggerate getting outside the ball or they over exaggerate getting behind the ball, right? That's what you're training in these. And then when we go in the game, if a guy catches the ball on top of his head, we don't care. Like you caught the ball, whatever, we'll work on it in practice to make it better.
Yeah,
And there's a difference between practice and drill work and competition time. You know
for
what I
sure.
mean? So no,
And those, and
I
those
just
are
wanted to
great.
kind of add that in there.
Yeah, those are great analogies. Just the, the common denominator of being able to move through the
Right,
baseball. That's
right,
also been a huge key for a lot of our guys when it comes to blocking,
right,
which I know we're not talking about today, but moving through the block, meeting the ball there versus like abruptly trying to beat it and get into this perfect blocking position before contact, like, is extremely unrealistic,
right.
so giving guys the freedom to be free flowing through their movements definitely is a big key, in a lot of facets, but
Right.
I do like those analogies. So moving into like the pre-pitch move, the two things that we've really focused on, especially in the last couple months with our guys, has been treating the pre-pitch move more like a load, okay, and setting ourselves up for efficient first moves to the baseball, right? And that kind of connects to what you were talking about, especially on like the arms or the catcher's arm side pitch, right, reaching across the body.
Right.
Um, so with the pre-pitch move, guys can feel loaded in a number of different positions, but um, we definitely cue the shoulder, when we're just like really trying to feel that out in early stages. Is some guys will find it through like kind of internally rotating.
Right.
There's a drill that Craig Driver gave us a while back where we're like screwing our hand in the ground
Right.
and bringing our fingertips back towards
Right.
us, kind of
Before you
that.
get here and
Yeah.
yep.
So even when you just drop your glove, like kind of feeling that internal rotation a little bit usually gets guys in a good position to like go attack the baseball, which we think is good. Some guys just feel loaded by getting a little bit deeper, right? Like you've seen
Right.
Tyler Flowers, he loads real deep. Usually that's a move for older guys, but if they feel like they can get deep and really like come out to be aggressive to the ball, that's another way to do it. As long as they're putting themselves in a position to make positive progress to the baseball with their first move.
Right.
So, if guys are loading up, and this goes back to the kinetic chain though, but like guys, if they load and then they hover once the pitch is thrown and they come up and they get flat with their forearm or like parallel to the ground with their forearm, that's like the worst thing we can have.
Right. Well, it's just like
So
a posture issue, right? Like most
yeah,
baseball issues is if you're unable to maintain your posture, you are going to put yourself at a disadvantage in any hitting, fielding, throwing.
yeah.
Being able to maintain posture while moving what you're trying to move, I feel like that's the name of the game when it comes to baseball in general. But yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. We look for efficient first moves. Another thing that I think is interesting, and we haven't really talked about this with a lot of people, but I know when we were first teaching move the ball, years back, it was wait as long as you can, as long as you can. And I don't disagree with it necessarily, but what we saw was like we're really creating a lot of one-dimensional moves, right? Where
Right.
guys only have one way to go. They waited so long they can only go up. And it wasn't that long ago actually that the pitch is coming at us in a lot of different ways. There's vertical break, there's horizontal break, there's a depth, factor with it traveling 60 feet, 6 inches. We have to have a move that can match those planes. And so we really got access to some video of some big leaguers from the side, and we started videoing our guys from the side more. And what we saw was that guys who really got off consistently good moves and pocketed the ball well, a lot of those guys were going out there and getting the ball,
Right.
which we kind of already knew. Everybody makes an extension move, everybody makes a flexion move, but um, like really working out there in space. And it was actually through some Wilson Contreras videos that we saw like, hey, maybe he was a little bit early here, but he didn't lose leverage. He didn't break the kinetic chain. Like his first move was really efficient below the baseball. And that put him in a position to still catch the ball out front at the highest point and get off a good enough move to get a strike call. So we actually started looking at it the other way. It was like, hey, how early can we be?
Right.
But still maintain good leverage, good positioning. Um, and I think that really challenged more than ever our guys' ability to like keep that kinetic chain intact. So
that's awesome. I mean, that's huge. And I think the other thing too is like with the kinetic chain and understanding this, I think what I've seen is in like kind of like what you just said, like I've seen more guys be comfortable catching the ball out in front of their eyes. And the biggest thing is what I'm always trying to do, especially with young catchers or catchers that are new, that have been catching for a while, is getting them to understand what catching the ball deep means, right?
yeah,
Catching the ball deep doesn't mean under our chin. It just means that we kind of set our target, we set that area, right? And that's our catching zone. That's where we want to be at. We're not trying to get out of the catching zone, right? We're trying to
yeah,
stay in that spot so our eyes are always behind the ball. And I think again, when you're thinking about using the whole arm versus for the forearm to wrist, right? That was for a long time, forearm to wrist, boom, and the really good catchers, and the if you paid attention to a lot of coaches who are demonstrating, right? They were using the whole chain, right?
oh
It
yeah,
was just the focal point of the terminology and the words were from here to here, right? And it was
yeah,
wrist and it was here. But when they were demonstrating, they were using the whole thing. They were just focusing on it from this side. Whereas
yeah,
now we're getting kids to think about this and that this will follow versus
yeah,
thinking about this and then trying to breaking, and like that's kind of the name of the topic tonight is or today is don't break the chain, and
yeah.
getting kids to actually feel that um is huge. And like I said, I love like when you're focusing on one thing and it cleans up other stuff, right? Like pot like things, if we can maintain a good chain and we can maintain good rhythm and good timing, is that we clean up our posture, we clean up our pocket, or where our pocket is, right? And then we help ourselves being able to see the ball. And all three of those are going to make it easier for us to catch the ball, right? And at the end of the day, right, like we said, like I do like the hat that Goodrow has out right now, catch the damn ball, right?
Yeah,
Like that is the goal. But in
for
practice and in
sure.
our drill work, we're trying to get everyone to feel this. And like I said, the free flow of it is what allows you to manipulate your body in an athletic competition, right? Athletically adjusting on the fly and being like, how'd you do that? I don't know. I just did it. All right, well, we can break that down later, but that was great, and
Yeah.
and I think that's the thing that which is exciting about catching, and it's exciting right now, is that you're starting to see that creativity that you've seen in other positions now get back behind the plate. And and for me, like that's fun, right? Like conversations with you and conversations with guys in this catching community are so much fun because we're trying to be like, all right, does that work? Or no, it doesn't work. Or I don't know, that might work. Like to
Yeah.
me, that's allowing kids that maybe had to stop catching earlier because maybe they couldn't athletically do what people were asking of them, now have different avenues and different ways to attack the same problem.
Yeah, I think these were MT's words. He said something on one of our Zooms one night along the lines of like multiple solutions for multiple problems, and that's really what we're trying to do. And
Right.
when it comes to, you know, pushing the envelope or just kind of trying to always figure out a better way, there's a ton of failure that comes along with that. We fail every day in our facility. Our catchers fail every day. It's
Right.
something. If they don't, I don't really feel like I did my job. Unless we're getting them ready for a game in an hour, we're probably not going to
Right.
spend a whole lot of time failing them there. But there's a lot of failure that comes along with it. But at the same time, there is so much excitement and there's so much ownership of what these kids are doing, because of the way that we train, right? Like, you get guys coming in all the time. Hey, man, I saw, a video of one of the college guys. I want to try that. I
Right.
saw how he caught that ball at the bottom of the zone. I want to try that, and in the back of my head, I may be saying like, oh, you're nowhere near ready
Right.
for something that complex or whatever. We always give them the chance to do it. And sometimes they surprise us, but nonetheless, like, there is that excitement. There's not a
Right.
lot of, I don't think there is, but I don't think, there's not a lot of guys out there who have 13, 14-year-old kids that get excited for blocking,
Right.
you know, but
No.
some of our kids get excited for blocking when they say, oh man, I saw, so-and-so doing it last week in your cage. Like, I want to try it from one knee today. Or
Right.
I want to try it from 2 feet, but I want to do it this way, So when you're constantly bringing, I think, the fresh ideas or just create that environment, like, guys get excited to train, and that's where progress happens. It doesn't happen when they're going through the same boring, you know, um, stuff that may not even work for them.
Right. No, I think that's huge. And so the last thing I kind of want to talk about is when it comes to don't break the chain. And this is a question that I know I get asked all the time with the pre-pitch movement, right? Where we have our glove and let's say we're working the bottom of the zone, right? So our pre-pitch movement is going to take us to the bottom of the zone. It's going to take us below the bottom of the zone, right? We've got a lot of people. The number one thing that they ask are, well, how are you giving a target to the pitcher? And I know, like, when I'm doing drill work when we first start, I get a lot of our guys to get it on the ground, right? And then my goal is by the time we're at pens, which is right around now, is making that movement more subtle, right? Where they're, and again, like you said, like some guys have to load big, some guys have to load small. It's everyone has their own individual rhythm, and getting them to kind of be able to show a target, right? Because I the hardest part about catching is as much as you want to do it for you, that guy on the bump has to feel comfortable, right?
Yes.
And I always start with, well, ask your pitcher what he's looking at. If he's looking at your glove, then you may have to be a little bit smaller, right? But you may have to start lower than than you would normally, right? And then you can go or whatever. Or maybe the catcher goes, well, I'm throwing at your chest protector, so I don't really care what you do with your glove, right? Like, right,
Yeah.
that I feel like that conversation really helps. But what do you teach your guys as far as like, hey, okay, this coach, my pitching coach, because right, like we work with guys that play for other people, and I'm not a believer of just being like, hey, do what I tell you to do, don't listen to your coach, because it really makes it hard for you to become a leader if your coach isn't behind you on that. So like, what do you talk to your guys about as far as like, hey, coach wants me to show a target with my glove, right? But I got to get to the bottom of the zone. So what kind of stuff do you talk about with them?
Um, I mean, first and foremost, like, it all kind of falls under the umbrella of creating versatile receivers,
Right.
guys who are adjustable, adaptable. We can catch the baseball multiple ways, present the baseball multiple ways, and understand the pros and cons or the situations that would call for each. Um, but when it comes to that relationship with the pitcher and what they're looking for, like you said, the first thing we ask them is like, hey man, have the conversation.
Right.
Right. And a lot of times there might be some initial pushback, like, oh man, pitchers, I got to throw to that glove. Um, but if you push them on it a little bit, at least get them, hey, next bullpen, let's try doing it without it. Try
Right.
focus on my chest protector. Let's see if anything changes. If it doesn't, we can go right back to, what we're already doing, or I can show the target the whole time or whatever. But put them in a position where they feel like it's a two-man effort. We're going
Correct.
to figure out the best way to do this, right? I got your back. But also understand that what I'm trying to do is to help you out.
Right.
Right. It's not just because I want to do this for fun. Like, it's going to make us better.
Right.
So, sometimes don't be afraid to ask them to meet me in the middle somewhere.
Right.
I think that's important. But if all else fails and you got to show that target a little bit longer, then we're going to have to figure out a way to make sure you can receive like that.
Right.
And, I think that actually for a lot of our high school guys, we found that that's a pretty standard scenario. There's a lot of guys who 7 guys on the pitching staff and 6 of them are cool with what we're doing. One of them just like ain't having it.
Right.
All right, well, we're going to catch that one guy a little bit different, and that's
Correct.
okay.
Right.
So that's kind of how we handle it. It's the guys at the college level and the pro level, they don't seem to have as much of an issue with it because, there's more of a presence of data and,
Right.
maybe newer techniques and technology helping you decide what you want to do. But
Well, and focal points, right, and margin of error that on the
yeah,
pitcher
yeah,
side, right? Like it makes it easier for them because they're throwing to different focal points. Not a lot of those guys are focusing on the glove because even as old school as you are, if you're just doing a simple quarter turn, you're still moving the target right at
oh
some
yeah,
point when the pitcher's throwing. So there's always been movement. It's just now the amount of movement versus the benefit of the catcher being in a better position to match the angle or match the tunnel of that pitch.
for sure. And this isn't like this wouldn't be my first suggestion, but we've also had those kids who, the pitcher complains about it and the bullpen says don't do that, and then they get out into a game, and I don't think we've had anybody like directly like do it on purpose where they keep doing the pre-pitch move anyways. I think
Right.
they get out into a game situation and maybe forget, but then the pitcher doesn't notice.
Right.
Like he was complaining about it in the pen, said don't pre-pitch move, don't load. And then they got in the game and he did it anyways because he forgot and there was no issue. So, it's just something to make sure that you're communicating well with your pitcher. I think making it that 2-man team is important, not only for your pitcher catcher relationship, but for your player and catching coach relationship. Like, hey man, you know, Brandon teaches me this. I want to get on the same page with you. What are you thinking? We promote all of that. So
Well, even you as a catcher and the pitching coach relationship,
for
right?
sure.
And sometimes I feel like, I'm fortunate. My brother's the pitching coach at Dayton, and one of my really close friends, Sean Camp, is over at Mason, and he's the pitching coach. Like they're trying so hard from 60 feet 6 inches away from you to have success, right? They just want, I feel like a lot of times they just want you guys, they just want us as catchers to help them and match that. And that's where that conversation, like you said, it becomes a two-way street. It becomes, hey, the goal is to get outs. And
Yeah,
I'm trying to help you be efficient. This is how I'm trying to do it. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying this is what I want to try, and let's work on it together. And it may be stuff where, kind of getting off the pre-pitch, but on setups and stuff like that, like have conversations. And that's one thing, like we chart our pens. And I have a catching chart that I have for our guys. I really endorse the always grind notebooks. I think those are awesome. And then on
mm-hmm.
top of that, I have like small sheet where it's really dives into the catcher, and it's like each pitch broken down in the pen. But then what I always do is to force that communication. There's a spot for the pitcher where he has to grade my receiving on that pitch. And that's a perfect time for a pitcher or for a catcher to be like, and I make the catcher also grade himself. So like, let's say, 1 is the best. I put myself down as a 1 and my pitcher puts me down as a 3. And then I go, well, what didn't you like? Well, I just didn't like, because I felt like you were dropping the glove and, it was too fast, or I felt like you were moving and like I didn't feel calm okay. So what can I do to make that better? Right. Or I could be like, hey man, the reason why I'm doing this is because your slider is nasty and I cannot get outside it unless I do this. So I'm not saying that I need to do that, or I'm always going to be pushing it out of the zone for right now until I get better. And then again, like you said, it's two people working together for that common goal. And it's not like I'm doing this because of me, right?
Yeah.
Like we're doing this together, right? And I feel like that's the biggest thing is the pre-pitch movement is it allows us to get you those calls. And Ray Ricker always says, raise the right hand. And I love that. Like that's our goal, right? We're trying to raise that right hand of the umpire. And I think like that to me is one of those things that is so important from the communication, the leadership standpoint, but also to understand the why. And I know that's one of the reasons why you and I, started talking was you weren't telling me like to do something or to, this is why this is what you do. You weren't telling me the what. You were always explaining the why. And I feel like when you're explaining the why, then that gets into the how. And now you have a chance to really make something your own and push yourself conceptually, right? And as well as, your physical movements and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. It's definitely that team effort, and just that thought process in general is kind of what's led us to a lot of the things that we've found that have worked for our guys. Like there's definitely been times where we've been so like, well, I say me, I've been so caught up in, man, like, am I really giving my guys the best information here? Is this the best way to do it? Because you see this and you hear this, and this guy does this, and we've definitely had some players who are a little bit lost, and I've been lost myself. And sometimes it's just going back to, you know, uh, stripping it down to the core and saying like, okay, man, this is the pitch we're struggling with. Like, what end result do we want?
Right.
Right. And okay, we want this end result. How are we going to get there? And where do we have to start? Right. And then we'll look at how the player's moving already, and we can compare contrast on what this, theoretically optimal type of move is, or whatever position, and say, okay, man, you're really close. Now we
Right.
can see that, like, okay, let's just try this, or hey, man, we're not really close, but you're still like catching it pretty well. Maybe, maybe you're just different.
Right.
Um, but being able to really strip it down in the core and find the characteristics of like the catch that you're looking for at this part of the zone. Okay, so we have to make this type of movement to get to that position to catch it like that. And if we need to make this type of movement, we can start in this type of pre-pitch, right? And
Right.
just kind of work it backwards. I've always believed in working it backwards, but you're spot on, man. It's just, pushing the envelope and trying to figure out a better way to do things, and knowing the why and the how behind it is of the most importance.
No, man. Like I said, and I think there's a lot of people, especially like I said, with COVID, a lot of the high school seasons and stuff are getting pushed back. I know D1 is actually starting today, so hopefully that'll be yeah, right, yeah, let's go.
Thank God. Baseball.
So a lot of high school kids, a lot of travel kids are starting their bullpens now, and that's why, like I said, you're a guy I really respect a lot, and the way you talk about the movement patterns and stuff, I thought was huge to get kids to listen to. And that's why I do this, right? I do this because I feel selfish a lot because I have these great conversations, with guys like you, and I'm like trying to always regurgitate these things. When I'm talking to kids, like I was talking, instead of just like, let's get some of these conversations out there so kids can listen, kids can enjoy them. And even if you pick up one thing, that's one thing that's worth it. But Brandon, I wanted to make sure everybody here is able to find you, find your social media, find your website. If you don't mind, go ahead and share that information real quick with us.
Yeah, it's so the Instagram is at Catching Coalition, and then the Twitter is also at Catching Coalition. The word catching has no vowels in it, so I think it's CTCHNG Coalition. on Twitter. And then our website's www.catchingcoalition.com. And yeah, that's it, man. My line's always open. My response time's not great, but my line's always open.
Now
I
remember,
am
East
pretty
Coast people,
busy.
he's on West Coast time right now. So we got him up early today. All right. So
Yeah.
my man is a grinder. My man is a grinder.
Yeah. So, but yeah, man, I always love to talk catching. I love to, hear people's thoughts and ideas and like we said earlier, find a better way to do things. That's always the goal. So if I can leave with one thing, I'll leave with this, for the catchers listening out there. Obviously the position is evolving. There's a lot of people who try to tell you what you can't do, especially based off of age. And one of the most humbling things that I've experienced in the coaching realm is I've been blown away at what certain players can do. Definitely exceeded my expectations because I too had already put them in a bubble based off of their age or what I thought their skill level was. So don't be scared to try some of this stuff. That's the bottom line. You can't be scared to try. If you fail at it, you know where you stand. But don't be scared to move the ball. Don't be scared to try new techniques. The only person who can tell you how much movement's too much movement is the umpire. And train yourself to be as versatile and adaptable as possible. I think that's huge. So whether you're a 9-year-old listening or a 19-year-old, like it all still applies.
Not, man, that's awesome, man. That's an awesome way to kind of sum this up and recap it. And we'll make sure also on anything that we post this to, we'll put your social media handles on there as well as your website. But Brandon, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on, spending the time with us. And dude, seriously, man, this was awesome.
Cool. Thanks, man. I enjoyed it. And I'm sure we will chat again soon.
Sounds good. This has been the Catches You podcast. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you on the field soon.